In this lecture, I will be talking about person-centered therapy, one of the, I would say, very influential therapeutic approach in doing counseling, which is many of these concepts and principles are still applied today. Whatever type of um, approach you're following, many of the ideas put forward by proponents of person-centered therapy are still in place, and for many reasons they are really very helpful. When you become a full-fledged counselor, it's important to utilize these techniques, or of course they would not like to call it techniques, but more of the disposition of the therapies. How you as a therapist or counselor should relate with your client. Okay? So again, when I start to present many of the concepts here, I would like you to start imagining how you are going to utilize this, especially in your role plays. Don't forget, read the text by Corey, the chapter which I have shared on Blackboard. Read them for you to better understand these concepts. I will not be talking about that in detail here, but I will expect you to understand that as you read the text. So here I'll just give you an overview and hopefully at the same time guide you on how you are going to demonstrate this in your role plays. Let me now begin. Well, you know Carl Rogers, right? You are very familiar with him. And for many reasons, he is popular even up to now. And I remember in our last discussion, I told you that most likely many of those who are working in call centers, they make use of his ideas or his theoretical concept on how to approach people who are in need, or on how to approach, especially when you're in a call center environment, how to approach irate customers. Or also at the same time when we are in a crisis situation, like after a calamity, how you are going to engage with the people who are affected by a calamity, those whose lives were devastated due to the loss of their homes, loss of lives of their close friends or family members. Now, how we engage with them as a professional. This theoretical framework has really influenced many of our engagements nowadays, especially when we want to help people, when we want to promote peace, when we want to promote reconciliation. These concepts are very essential. Okay, and you will understand why as I go along in this discussion. So, for person centered theory, what is their view of human nature? How do they look at human persons? They believe, Carl Rogers in particular, that the very core of the human nature is that when you dig deep into their hearts, into their very person, you will find that humans are trustworthy and positive, no matter what. No? Sila ay mabubuting tao. Ang tao ay mayroong angking kabutihan. So they are trustworthy and positive. See, immediately you will find the difference between person-centered and psychoanalytic. No? How Freud looked at the human person. Start comparing it. No? You will see a big shift from the usual psychoanalytic to the person-centered therapy. No wonder during the time of Carl Rogers, when he was proposing his theory, it really caused a lot of discussion and debate, because he did not follow the usual idea of how to do psychotherapy. Anyway, let me continue. So they believe, again, proponents of person-centered theory, they believe that humans are capable of making changes and living productive, effective lives. No? Humans are capable of making changes. So what happens now is that it is now the client, the person who has the capacity for change. No? So he is the agent here, not the therapeutic approach, not the counselor. Okay? So humans innately gravitate towards self actualization. We have that actualizing tendency, meaning to say, we want to grow, we want to develop, we want to improve, we want to become perfect. It's part of us. We are gravitated toward that direction. We want to be better, we want to be fulfilled, we want to be happy. Well, look at it. No? Look at yourself. I think this is very true for many of us, if not all of us, that we really would like to become better. No? Of course, there will be times, perhaps, no, for many that this will not be realized, especially if you're into depression or you are into this idea of trying to harm yourself. No? So there will be moments that you might be encountering that. But generally, there is truth to this that we want to become better. Okay? And for this theory, what is important is that for that to happen, for growth to happen, for improvement to happen, there should be that right growth fostering conditions. We will talk about that later more. Individuals strive to move forward and fulfill their creative nature. For that to happen, there should be that condition that surrounds that person where it is conducive for growth. Okay, take note of that. No, what is important is that for that person to grow, no, kinakailangan yung paligid niya I will provide that environment. It's just like an acorn, no? Sa ito yung nabasa natin sa text natin, no? Pero yung butong niya, yung maliit niya, basta you just have to take care of it. And when you take care of it, it has its own natural tendency to grow. No? So the more you provide a good environment for that acorn, the better its growth will be. So it's the same for human beings, okay? Let's now go to that person-centered therapy. What are the challenges? No? As I said, this is now a reaction to that directive approach by psychoanalysis. No? When I say directive, you remember who directs? The counselor. Who is all-knowing? The counselor. Who knows the techniques? The counselor. Who interprets most of the time? The counselor. Here, that will not be the case. Okay? So what are the challenges that they are proposing, that they are putting forward? No? That the assumption that the counselor knows best. If you are a person-centered therapy, you will have to put that aside, that idea that you know best for the client. In fact, what happens here, again, as I said, the agent of change is who? The client, the counseling. So when you do counseling, start thinking of that you are not in charge. Okay? You are not in charge so that this person will grow. You will not going to tell him what to do. Okay? Your role is you are the support. Okay? That environment, that conducive environment. And how you will do that, we'll talk about that later. Okay? At this point, I want you to challenge that idea when you are a proponent of this approach. You do not know best. Well, you can have some idea, of course, huh? But you are not going to impose that on your client. Okay? Because of that, you question the validity of advice, suggestion, persuasion, teaching, diagnosis, and interpretation. So somehow this is a no-no to this approach. See the difference now, right? In psychoanalytic, you can interpret, you can diagnose, you can suggest, you can persuade, advise, you can teach. But here, no. Okay? You don't do that here. Why? Because you are not the agent of change here. Okay? You are not the one who will make it all happen. It will be the counselee. It will be the client. Okay, how to do that? We'll get there once we talk about the disposition of the counselor or the psychotherapist. Okay, now they challenge also the belief that clients cannot understand and resolve their own problems without direct help. They challenge that notion because they believe, again, as I said earlier, that you, as your client, can do that. They have that innate actualizing tendency. They have that in them already. What is important is that you provide the conditions so that that will happen. What conditions again? I will talk about that later. So, okay? So, the focus on problems over persons, they challenge that. It is not about the problem. No? Don't worry about the problem. No? In other therapeutic approach, we focus on the problem. But here, no, we focus on the human person. Because when you provide that, again, as I said earlier, that conditions conducive for growth, the person will find answers to their problem. So here, when you do your therapeutic role play, your role play, when you do this, what you can do is like when your client begins to ask for advice, what do you do? Okay, so what will I do? Then you can bring it back to the client, like something like, for example, Father, I am worried because my parents are telling me to leave the seminary, for example. And I respect them and I'm obedient to them. But at the same time, I know that I want this. So what will I do? So if you are a counselor of a person-centered approach, you don't tell your counselee, no, you know what to do? You follow your parents. Or you tell your client, you know what? Follow your heart. No, that's more, I think that's the right thing to do. We don't do that here. Okay? One technique could be you ask, I know it is really a dilemma. For one thing, you want to help, you want to follow your parents because you're obedient. Another side is that deep inside you, that's not what you want, and you may not be happy, and that's a real dilemma. You can stop there. What did you just do? You reflected what's happening. Now, you reflected, meaning to say, you put back the problem, said it in a different way that you understood clearly what he was trying to present to you, and just reflected back to the client or to your counselee what was happening to him. Okay, you can just stop there, or some would even go further by asking, "What do you think? What should you do? If I will ask you, what should you do?" In short, you don't offer any answer. Okay, what happens here is that you make your client feel that you understand what is happening to them. Okay, so now you have the idea now of that condition, of where or what kind of environment you as a counselor can offer to your client. Okay, I hope you are following me. What does it emphasize, this person-centered therapy? What it emphasizes is that therapy is a journey shared by two fallible people. Okay, two fallible people, meaning the client and the counselor. So see the difference here again. Psychoanalytic, you are all knowing, you can interpret. But here you have to have that stance when you come into counseling that you, with all honesty and humility, will tell yourself that I may be wrong, or I may be right, or I could be, I may not be the perfect counselor for this person. So you recognize that, okay? You have something to offer, of course, but you recognize the fact that you are not the answers to all the questions, okay? Or even say that you don't have the answer to the question. It is the client who has the answer, okay? So two fallible people means say that both of you are not perfect, okay? And the person's innate striving for self-actualization. So again, we emphasize this that the client they can strive for self-actualization without you telling them what to do. So in this approach, when you do your role play, I don't want to see that you are telling your client what to do. You don't do that here, okay? So think of your role play again, no? Never do that in this approach. So when you demonstrate that, it will be something that you cannot do here if you're a strict follower of this approach. So what does the counselor do is to create a permissive growth promoting climate. Permissive growth promoting climate. So if you are a counselor, you will allow mistakes and allow your client to learn from that. Okay? If that is the decision of the client, so be it. Okay? If he wants, for example, to say, and you don't agree totally, and then he wants to say, no, 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 I want to follow my parents. I had to be obedient to them. But deep inside you, you said, no, I think that's a wrong decision. You cannot stop him or even influence him to not to do that. What you can do is be permissive, allow him. If that is his choice, then allow him. Okay? And then give your support to him. He may learn something from that. Okay? And people are capable of self-directed growth if involved in a therapeutic relationship. If there is that good relationship between the counselor and the counselee, then that self-directed growth will happen. Okay? So now you are starting to imagine, I'm sure, how you are going to do your role play, how you are going to make this, how to demonstrate this in your role play. Okay. So therapy is a growth promoting climate. So that therapeutic relationship is what now you are going to focus on. How are you going to provide that climate to your client? So here are some suggestions on how to do that. Congruence, meaning to say that there is genuineness or realness in the therapy session. Genuine, everything is real. What you feel is real. You don't fake it. Okay, your words match your action. You do not engage with your client to please your client to the point that you are lying or hiding the truth to your client. If you feel that you are struggling with his decision, if there is that deep therapeutic relationship between the two of you, you can offer that and say that and express that. Okay? So that will not be an issue. And here you can start to use, because you are two equal persons in a relationship here, you can even use disclosure, but always, of course, in the context of genuineness and really helping your client. Okay? It is not about helping yourself more, but how you can help the client. Unconditional positive regard. What does this mean? Acceptance and genuine caring about the client as a valuable person. Okay, there should be that acceptance, no? Not easy, right? Especially if you start to don't like your client, no? But there should be that genuine caring, that you deeply care for your client, no matter what. That is the unconditional positive regard. Accepting clients as they presently are. And of course, that doesn't mean that you have to approve all of your client behavior, as I was saying a while ago. But Even though you don't approve of that, you give your support and then have that disposition where you believe that your client is in the process of growing. He could be wrong, or I could be right, or I could be wrong and he could be right. No? Having that disposition is very important. But what is important here is no matter what happens, no, you are there accepting your client. Okay? So easy said than done, right? But here you can see the influence of Christian values on Carl Rogers. That idea of forgiveness, that idea of love, okay? That idea of you being a brother or a sister to one another. So this unconditional positive regard. Okay. Third, which is very interesting to discuss, the accurate empathic understanding. Okay, a while ago I was talking about call centers. No? They, I'm sure up to now, they utilize this concept a lot in their practice of their profession. So what is this? It is the ability to deeply grasp the client's subjective world. Okay, your client's subjective world. You understand what's happening in him. No? You have a view of what's there for him. No? You don't, it's more than sympathy that you pity the person. No, you know where they're coming from. You feel with them. Okay, as if what's happening to them is also happening to you, but of course you are not enmeshed in that scenario, but you feel with them. So the helper attitudes are more important than knowledge. The therapist need not experience a situation to develop an understanding of it from the client's perspective. Of course, empathy doesn't mean that for you to be empathic with your client, that, for example, he suffered a loss of a loved one, that you should also experience that. Of course, it could be an advantage, but it's not necessary. It just simply means that when they're sad, you feel sad as well. You journey with them. If they're happy, you are genuinely happy for them. Okay. When they are angry, you feel that anger, no? But you are still in control also of your emotions. No? You are not, of course, lost in the world of your client. But there is that accurate grasp of what's happening. No? And in words, especially when you are working with customers, no? Again, call centers, no? They try to practice this by naming the feelings of their clients. No? When, for example, somebody would call you and started expressing their frustrations, for example, complaining about the service on their telephone, Globe telephone example only. No? There is no always no signal. Then they started calling the hotline, the customer hotline. Then you are the one who answered it. Imagine that you're an officer who is in charge of this. What do you do? How do you do this? Somebody saying, "Oh, why your service is very poor. No, I am paying you, but you are not giving me the right service." No. How do you respond to that? Do you get angry with your client? Of course not. Okay, so to do that, as a practice, some would do is reflect back, reflect the feeling. You can say something like, first, sir, I'm really sorry for what happened to you. I know how it is frustrating when your phone, which is so expensive, and then you cannot use it. I'm really very sorry for that. Okay. So here what happens is that your words match what your client is feeling. Okay. You start to name the feeling of your client. I know it's kind of frustrating. I know you're angry right now because you have all the right to be angry. Imagine you bought a very expensive phone and you cannot use it. Okay, so that is an accurate understanding of what is happening with the client. Similarly, I expect you to do that in your role play. Okay, when somebody comes in very angry, how do you repeat that or summarize or paraphrase that? How do you reflect that to the client that you completely understood what is happening to him? Okay, instead of telling him, no, 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 don't be angry. That is bad. That is a mortal sin. No. Okay, you don't do that here. Instead, you say, I feel your anger. You know what? If that happens to me, I know that will happen. I will feel the same way. And because of that, I'm sorry for what happened. Okay? So, in short, you completely understood and you express that in your words. Of course, when you say that, your gesture, your body language should match your words as well. And more than that, not only your body language, not only your words, more importantly, okay, it matches really what your heart is really saying. Okay, you don't fake it. No, you don't act here. You have to be genuine. Don't forget. Okay. So, what are these six conditions so that change can occur? Now, in a therapeutic setting, these are something like principles that can guide you. Now, how you will envision your therapy. Number one, two persons are in psychological contact. Okay, as I said, no, you should be feeling what your client is feeling, have an understanding. Okay, you are in a relationship with that person, so there's that psychological contact between two persons. You are not detached, okay, like a traditional psychoanalytic approach, where you are detached. Here, you are not. Okay, your emotions are real. Okay, second, the client is experiencing incongruence. When you're in therapy, it is presumed, that's why somebody approached you for counseling, that they are experiencing some anxiety, they are experiencing some meaninglessness in their lives, they are experiencing that they are not growing. Okay, so the client is in congruence. And you, as a counselor, the second person, the therapist, you are congruent or integrated in the relationship. What does this mean? It will be a devastating experience if the client is suffering from anxiety and then you engage in a relationship with that client and you too is suffering with from anxiety. Okay, so that will be a recipe for a disastrous relationship. So, for example, somebody is depressed and looking for somebody to who will love him in return. And you're also depressed, looking for someone to love you in return as well. And then you come in contact with each other. As I said, that will be a disastrous recipe. Now, boundaries can be crossed along the way. So it's important that you as a therapist should be congruent. So that when you feel for the other, it doesn't mean that you're enmeshed with him. Okay? Fourth, the therapist experiences unconditional positive regard or real caring for the client. Okay. So you are really feeling, as I said, now you have that unconditional positive regard for that person. You deeply care for the person. And that care is really expressed in words and in action, no? In your behavior, in the way you conduct your therapy. That should be clearly demonstrated. And that is an honest expression of how you feel for your client. Okay, that's very important to make um, that condition that I was talking about. Okay, that should be present in a therapeutic relationship. Okay, point, quiet, my dog. Okay, never mind. Fifth, the therapist experiences empathy for the client's internal frame of reference and endeavors to communicate this to the client. Okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. Okay, now you really experience that empathy, and then you 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 express that, you communicate that to your client. You know, I feel so sorry that that's happening to you, and if you feel like crying, with your client, go ahead. You can cry with your client, okay? And that's okay. Just make sure that when your client is already okay, that after that you're also okay already. I mean, at least that you are not affected so much that after the session that you are the one carrying the burden. After ilang araw, eh, okay na pala yung client mo, ikaw pa rin, eh, mabigat na mabigat pa rin ang pakiramdam mo. And then when it happens, start checking also yourself. Now you could be experiencing something, something else. Okay. And lastly, the communication to the client is to a minimal degree achieved. Okay. The communication to the client is achieved. Meaning, I think something is missing in this sentence. But I think what is the message here is that um, all of these, all of what's happening in the relationship, okay, all that's happening inside of you and inside of him, um, that is somehow achieved. Okay, there is no dishonesty. Okay, there are no pretensions happening. What is important here is not so much the technique, but how that relationship evolves again in the context of providing the right conditions for growth to the client. Okay, here it's always about the client. This is happening not because for you, but for the client. And of course, along the way, that will be impacting you, of course. No? That will be also changing you. But the framework is always for the client so that the client will have now the courage or will have the conditions that will motivate him to grow. Okay. So you as a therapist now, what should you should be happening to you? No? Where should you focus now as a therapist? Okay, the therapist now will focus on the quality of the therapeutic relationship. Okay, as I've been saying, now, the relationship is the one that will help, that will assist the client to grow. Okay, your relationship with your client will help the client to grow. Ultimately, it's he who will decide on that. But at least when you provide the supportive relationship, that will motivate him. So that quality, what kind of relationship are you providing your client now? Are you also controlling or manipulative? Of course, if you're like that, that will not be helpful for your client. Or are you too directive that you want to control everything? Or you are also a jealous counselor to the point that no, what you're now looking at is that it's a relationship more geared towards your need, then that will be a problem. Okay? So as a therapist, you need to focus on that quality. What kind of relationship you build with your client? A supportive, unconditional. Okay? No matter what happens, no, you are there for that client. You provide a supportive therapeutic environment in which the client is the agent of change and healing. Okay? As I said, no, it's not you who is the agent here, but your client. What you just do is you support him. Okay? And third, you serve as a model. As I said earlier, that what's important is that you must be congruent. No? You are not experiencing incongruence. No? Why? Because you will be modeling to your client, okay, how to live his life, no? How to handle his emotions. No? You are there as a model. No? So if you are integrated, you are able to become, you are a good model. No? You can show to your client how it is, no, to behave in certain manners, no, in certain matters. No. What happens is if you are not also congruent, you might be showing to your client something else that could not be helpful for him or her. Okay, so because of that, if you are a model to your client, you should be genuine, integrated, more or less. No, not perfect, of course. Nobody's perfect. As I said, we are all fallible. But at least, more or less, you are integrated. No? You know your issues. You can handle your own issues. No? You can be honest with your own issues, but not to the point that your honesty is harming your client. No? Okay? And you're authentic without a false front. Because the danger here is that sometimes you might be faking it. You might be like a movie actor playing a part, no? As if you are really empathic to your client, but in reality, those are just mere words, no? All role plays, no? Not genuine, not real. Okay? Then you can openly express feelings and attitudes that are present in the relationship with the client. Yes, you can openly express that. You are not, you don't have issues on saying that, you know, at the moment I feel so angry. Or you are also frustrated with your client, you can always say, you know what, we've been together, working together. And sometimes I also feel frustrated because as if you're not moving forward. But I know it's not about me. It is about you. And I have to check myself on that. And I think I need to respect your pacing. That can happen. See, you can express that. That can happen. No. It is different when they say you express your feeling by saying, you know what, I'm frustrated with you. And I think because of that, you have to do this because if not, I will stop seeing you. Then in that case, you're not integrated. Okay? You have your own personal issues that you need to address as well. Then, you as a therapist now, you're invested in developing his or her own life experiences to deepen self knowledge and move towards self actualization. Okay? So you are there like a mentor, a friend, okay, a support system, okay. You are invested in developing that his or her life experiences to the point that you are there so that he will have that capacity or she will have that capacity to deepen uh, his or her knowledge about himself, okay. And in that way, he will be able to motivate himself to improve himself, to become better. And lastly, as a therapist, you do not choose the goal for your client. It is the client who will choose what he wants in his life. You are just there practically just to listen, just to provide support. You are there just to model how it is, no? To be a good person. No? You provide genuine care. So these are the right conditions, that growth promoting environment in a therapy that will help your client to become better. And whatever decisions in life he would choose, whether he would like to follow his parents to be obedient or to continue staying in the seminary, as in my example earlier, then it's up to him. Or if you meet a client who is sexually abused by, for example, by his husband, um, a wife who's raped by his husband, and then you believe that she should leave, no, leave that husband, no? And I think that's the right thing to do, no? And then even though you feel that, and then your client does not want to do that, yet, then you cannot force her. It's all up to her. What is important to her is that you continue supporting her until finally she will have that realization, whatever it takes. And what is the experience of your client? How would you envision that? Or in this therapeutic approach, what is happening to your client? So, change depends on the client's perception of their therapeutic experience and on the therapist's attitude. Okay? So, uh, what what the humanist approach is trying to tell us here is that it's all about the client's perception of the experience with you and your attitude towards him. Okay. And because of that, change will happen. If you are a caring therapist, you can begin to expect that your client will start to change. If you give unconditional positive regard, you provide that, and change will begin. Clients come to session due to incongruence, a discrepancy between self-perception and experience of reality. That's what I was talking about, incongruence. Something's happening to him, that's why he goes to session. That's why he goes to you. Your client goes to you because something is wrong. Okay? And through the process, clients can explore a wide range of feelings and behaviors. While doing therapy, your client can express everything, no? No holds barred. He or she can express to you whatever that is. And what you do, you listen, you feel with him. And just your session could be just like reflecting back the feeling of your client without any advice. No? Or sometimes you just can be quiet and really listening and feeling, or maybe crying with the person. And that is already therapy. Okay? A 1 hour session with your client who is so emotionally down and really pouring out everything, and then you, as a counselor, is just quiet, looking at the client, listening well, your body is speaking as if that now that your body is really into the moment and feeling what the client is feeling. And then the therapist is just crying or tearing while your client is pouring out and you are quiet the whole time. That is already a therapeutic experience for the client. Okay? See my point? You don't need to give advice. What is important is the here and now and how you relate with your client. Now you have some idea on how to do your role plays. Okay. A non-judgmental environment helps clients explore additional feelings and behaviors and learn to become more realistic. So when your client begins to express negative emotions and you don't judge them, in fact, you accept that, then you'll send a signal to your client that I can be real here. I can tell my counselor whatever I feel and I will not be judged. They might be very negative, but still, my counselor will be there to understand me. And with that said, the client now will be able to explore all the feelings, both positive and negative, and he will not be afraid somehow to be judged. Okay? And immediacy, what is going on between client and therapist is explored. Now, how is this? There are times that it's always good to talk about even your relationship with your client. What's happening between the two of you? You explore that. For example, you know what? I've been seeing you for 4 months now, and almost every week I see you, and then I I hear your secrets, I hear your problems, no? And I notice that you're becoming more comfortable with me now. Today, I can see now that you're smiling, and you smile a lot to me now. I'm interested to know what's happening between the two of us. As a therapist, you can do that. You want to talk about the present moment. You want to hear your client express how your relationship with him is helping or not helping. Okay? And if it is not helping, you will not be on the defensive side because you're integrated. Okay? You will not be against him and say, you are ungrateful. Get out of here. No. Okay? So that immediacy, you talk about that. You explore it. All the feelings there, you're able to explore that. Okay? Um, More or less now, you have an idea on how to portray or demonstrate this approach, continue reading the text also, so that you will have a deeper understanding of what I'm talking about. And and lastly, I would like to talk about what are the limitations of this approach. I intentionally did not go deep into the other sections of your text. I am just highlighting some important things for you to know about this approach so that you have a general idea. And you will see if you go for counseling, those who are trained, or spiritual direction, I am pretty much sure that you are experiencing some of what I've been talking about. Or if you do counseling as well and you've been receiving some training, I'm sure also that you discuss this. Of course, person-centered would not like to call them techniques. No? They are the conditions of the therapies, no? The attitude. So most likely you have been using this, and they are important concepts and principles that I believe that we need to apply in all our counseling sessions. Okay, but of course later we'll try to also see other models, even reactions to this model, and how we can better improve this approach, especially when we encounter different cultures. Okay, so what are limitations to this approach? First, as cited by Corey, there are cultural considerations that should be taken into when using this approach. Some clients may prefer a more directive, structured treatment. No? They don't like all the time in counseling that you're always listening. Okay. Or some are not even into a non-directive approach. They want direction because they are in a culture where if you're an authority, then you can tell them what to do, and they're more comfortable with that. Because, as again, if you look at the history and the culture of Carl Rogers, this is very Western, you know, promoting independence, promoting autonomy. Sometimes, many times, these values are very Western centric, no? And may not be applicable to other cultures. Okay, individuals accustomed to indirect communication may not be comfortable with direct expression of empathy or creativity. No? Some people don't like to be too emotional, no? In how they engage with someone. Okay, so this will be a quite a challenge to apply. Okay, individuals from collectivist cultures may disagree with the emphasis on internal locus of control. This is what I was talking about. In individualistic culture, the emphasis in the internal locus of control, which is the self. So when it's the self, it's all about autonomy. What I want, what is good for me, and this could be not in agreement with other cultures who see that no, it's not the self, no, that should be the focus here, but what is good for the other. Okay, so when you say that I want to obey my parents because that is the value that you are promoted here, not what is good for me. Okay. Next, does not focus on the use of specific techniques. Okay. As I said, they don't like to use the word technique here, especially when we go in our future subject matter topics and lectures. You will see that very technical yung model na yun. But here, none of that. Okay. So what happens is the treatment is difficult to standardize. So if you want to see how effective this one is, medyo difficult to subject this to experiment and research because you cannot standardize this. Third, beginning therapists may find it difficult to provide both support and challenges to client. If you are just beginning here, it's kind of not easy, not easy to be that integrated immediately. You don't have yet that wisdom or that experience, or you don't feel that you yourself is already integrated. Okay, so that listening to somebody perhaps older than you may be quite a challenge to for you because you know you're not comfortable with expressing your emotions yet, or you yourself is not yet experienced to the point that you understand also what's happening with you. Okay, so it will be challenging. Limits of the therapist is a person may interfere with developing a genuine therapeutic relationship. Related to what I just said earlier, okay, we are not perfect, we are not all skilled, and we are developing our skills. So somehow that genuine therapeutic relationship may not be achieved. That's why it's important to have that. If you are a beginning therapist, especially if you feel that the client is not a perfect match for you, then you can always refer the person to somebody you think will be able to help that person. Okay, so these are the limitations. Some of them, maybe you have others that other more that you can see, and then you can share that in our class discussion the week after. So in the meantime, again, I would like to invite you to continue reading the text and understand so that when we do our quiz after the class, you will get a perfect score again. Okay? Thank you and have a good day.